Dear students, and this week we are going to see the basics of competition law and its application, and what is actually the competition law, and also its components of competition law, which is starting from today, the concept, then we will see the Indian scenario, and then what are the different aspects of competition law, which is starting from anti-competitive agreements, abuse of dominant position, and regulation of combinations. And we know that the competition law is a new branch of law, which is added to the entire realm of law, mainly because of international trade. What is this concept of competition actually? And there is a confusion between competition and competitiveness, and competition is defined by many scholars, and competitiveness is something different from competition. And Stingler's defines the competition as it is a rivalry between individuals or groups or nations, and it arises whenever two or more parties strive for something that all cannot obtain. It means that it is limited resource, and if some two competitors strive for capturing the market, it is a competition. So, and the competitiveness is something is different. And what is the object of competition? And you can see that the objective of competition is very clear in the market to make profit. Each and every company in the market is working with an objective of making profits. And economist basically says that there are three components to be look into the objective of competition. That the first one is the underlying variable of competition, that is price, quality and quantity, and secondly the aimed level of achievement, what competitiveness you want to achieve, then that the entire competitive process, which is facilitated by legislation and the competitive or competition policies. Again, you can see that the history says that the competition law or competition in the market is not new at all. So, the first form of anti-competitive practices, which you can find it in the form of cartels, and the cartels in time immemorial period. And also even in 483 AD, the constitution of Zeno punished price fixing in clothes and also the fishes, sea urchins, etc., with perpetual exile and usually to Britain at that point of time a colony. It means that the competition law is not the invention of 20th or 21st century, and this practice. So, the regulating the competition in the market is a time immemorial law which is prevailed in many countries at that point of time. See, the authentic portion of the competition law is given by the famous economist Adam Smith in 1776 in his book The Wealth of Nations. He says people of the same trade seldom meet together, even for this merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public or some wants to raise prices. So, competition in the market is not prohibited. So, the competitors are not prohibited. So, it is the competition in the market is promoted. The process of competition is promoted, not the competitors. So, Adam Smith very clearly says there must be competition in the market. When we look into the history, you can see that during the 1800 there are huge business firms, and especially in the United States, which are known as the famous names and the name of trust, which they control the whole economy of at that point of time, and they controlled the important businesses like railroads, oil, steel and sugar. And actually these companies have monopolies over these businesses, and no competition in the market and nowhere to go, no choice, and the consumers has to avail their services without any competition. At this point of time, and definitely all these are the competitive practices of this trust, which collecting amazing, massively amazing wealth, which is against the public interest or the public welfare, which is worried the governments at that point of time in the United States as well. The president of the United States at that point of time, the President Roosevelt, actually want to curb the monopolistic practices of this trust, which is against the consumer welfare, and they planned for an antitrust law. And this antitrust law in the United States, the laws are synonymously used as antitrust laws as well as the competition law. And at this point of time, you can very clearly say that the first authentic formal competition law came into existence in the United States in the name of Sherman Act of 1890. So, basically this is to regulate the activities of the trust and which come into play. And you can see the provision section 2 of this particular act very clearly says that every person who has monopolized or attempt to monopolize or combine or conspire with any other person or persons to monopolize any part of the trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations shall be deemed guilty of a felony, and conviction thereof shall be punished by fine as well as imprisonment not exceeding 10 years. Remember, this particular legislation made the restraint of trade as a felony. There is a huge fine and there is a jail time for indulging in such kind of activities. And later on, these trusts, again in order to avoid the Sherman Act, they find it mergers between different trusts in order to avoid the provisions of the Sherman Act. Then these in order to curb the loopholes, next they passed the act which is known as the Clayton Act of 1914. So, which made that there are curbs which made to the stopping mergers, and definitely in order to enforce the competition law very strictly in the United States, or the antitrust law very strictly, the Tariff Act of 1894 was passed, and agency, and that is the Federal Trade Commission. Federal Trade Commission was formed to enforce the antitrust law in the United States. So, you can see the formation of trust, by the American companies for massive wealth, massive wealth were carved by this particular law, and we can say that this is the authentic the new generation competition law which was passed first time in the United States. And this particular law promotes the free enterprises in America, and it held the particular law held all restraint of trade or try to make monopoly is illegal under this particular act. You can see that from the inception of this particular act, there are huge jurisprudence which is emerged in the United States on the antitrust law or the competition law, and which we will study in detail in the next week class. If you look into Europe, and Europe also actually want to come out with the legislation during the 1980s because of the monopolistic activities of huge business firms, and they come out with a draft law, but because of the political turmoil in the Europe, which prevented them from passing any law at that point of time. But actually the momentum was made immediately after the world wars is over, after the Second World War actually. And then the formation of the European Economic Community EEC in the 1957, and also which formed the EEC formed by the Treaty of Rome in 1957, which included specific provisions to deal with anti-competitive practices and abuse of dominant position in the Europe. So, originally it was in article 81 and 82 of the Rome Treaty, And the treaty, and presently the law is in article 101 and 102 of the treaty, and which clearly says or which clearly curbs the anti-competitive practices or the abuse of dominance or the agreements between two or more independent market operators which restrain competition. So, in Europe as well, the competition in the market is promoted, the competitive process is promoted, and also this the article 101 which clearly says that, which covers both horizontal agreements, that horizontal agreements actually means it is a potential competitors operating at the same level of supply chain, as well as the vertical agreements that between the firms operating at the different levels, that is agreements between manufacturers and distributors, these vertical agreements, and the both horizontal and vertical agreements are included under article 101 of the treaty forming the European Union. And again you can see that under the law, under the European law, cartels are considered to be most illegal conduct infringing these provisions, and we will see what is cartel in the coming classes in detail. And 102, the article 102 of the treaty very clearly prohibits firms that hold a dominant position and using their dominant position in the market and exploiting the market. And for example, by using the dominant position, they charge unfair prices, and by limiting production and they bundling products and tying agreements and trying to refuse to innovate, and which is absolutely prejudicial to the consumers. So, we can see that similar provisions which we can, the concept is one and the same in the United States and the European Union, and which what about the agreements, what are the type of agreements which curb the competition in the market is prohibited. And you can see that now in the modern the modern economic era, which is known as the whether you call it as liberalization or you call it as liberal economies or opened up economies, and presently more than 110 countries have the competition law, which shows that every country promotes competition in the market. In again you can see that this is considered to be revolutionary in nature, because most of the countries are never heard of competition law in their market. For example, India until 2002, India was never talked about the competition, promoting competition in the market, rather than they were concentrating on curbing monopolistic activities and restrictive practices with a legislation in 1969, which we will see later. And we can see that the competition law, which is it's the advanced state of law, this presently administered by many countries now, and mostly the markets are controlled or guided or regulated by these particular competition laws, and there is a close connection between these competition laws and innovations. And innovation, definitely innovation, we saw in the beginning classes, in the intellectual property classes, that all innovators get is supposed to get a limited period of monopoly for a period of time, and but if they started exploiting that particular monopoly, which they got it through patent protection or any other intellectual property protection, then the competition law will step in, and the competition law will step in into their monopolistic activities, even though it is protected by intellectual property rights. And again you can see that the whole activities in the market, the whole activities of competition in the market is regulated through the Competition Act. For example, the markets, if the market fails when these kind of activities are not curbed or not regulated. For example, these anti-competitive practices, for example, collusion, the collusion between firms, the collusion between firms and companies which form cartels, and market dominance, the giant companies like Microsoft or Google, we will see these cases later on. If they abuse their market dominance and market dominance for exploitation of the consumers, then the competition law will step in. So, simply we can see that when we look into the objective of competition law, it is definitely efficiency in the market as well as fairness in the market. So, efficiency and fairness are the two pillar stones of competition law or objective of competition law. So, we know that the efficiency is the concept that can be measured objectively. At the same time, the fairness cannot be measured, but that can be different from country to country, different from. So, the measurement of fairness will be different from developing countries, as well as developing country parameters will be different. Developed countries parameters may be absolutely different, and open economies like India, the parameter may be different, but a closed economies like China, everything is controlled by the state. So, then the parameter of efficiency may be very high, but the parameter of fairness may be very low. So, there is a close connection between competition, fairness and efficiency in the market.